Amid grim warnings, good morning, Mr. Harper, amid grim warnings that if they move too quickly there could be 90,000 plus deaths, why would you want to go faster? Good morning.
Well, Nick, just first of all, our approach has always been a very cautious one, absolutely tied to the very successful rollout of the vaccine. The question I asked the Prime Minister yesterday in Parliament was for what reason you couldn't relax restrictions once the top 9 groups have been vaccinated. So that's everyone over 50, everyone over 16 with a health condition making them vulnerable to COVID. Those groups account for 99% of the deaths. And there were two aspects to his answer which troubled me. The first one, which you've just referred to on modelling. Modelling, I'm afraid, and these estimates, it's all about the assumptions you make. And I'm afraid I've had a quick look at the models. I'm going to go through them in detail. 2 key assumptions. First of all, this is a reasonable mistake. They understate the performance that we now know the vaccine delivers. But to be fair, when they did the modelling, we didn't have that data. The biggest flaw is they assume a very low uptake of the vaccine. We know that the uptake of the vaccine is over 90% in the top groups that have been vaccinated at the moment, above 95%. They've assumed 15% of the population don't take the vaccine. And I have 2 problems with that. One is that isn't realistic. That's not what's happening. But secondly, there's a real question about whether the rest of the country should be held back for 2 months because some people choose not to take the vaccine. And I have a real problem with that because those 2 months, that 2 months of delay is going to have some very real consequences, as I'm sure you're about to hear, for big sectors of the economy. There will be people listening to your show now who are going to lose their jobs, lose their businesses because of that 2 months delay.
I understand your rationale now, and I'm grateful for the background to that. So how would you do it then? What would you do, Mr. Harper?
Well, I still think that the argument that I set out, which is that once you've protected through vaccination the top 9 groups of the population that account for 99% of the deaths from COVID, I still think that argument is sound. The only thing that I've seen to suggest it's not sound is this modelling. And as I said, the problem with modelling is the phrase that some listeners may be familiar with, garbage in, garbage out. If you make dodgy assumptions, you get dodgy answers. We saw that back last year when we had models that said 4,000 people a day were going to die, and we saw that was absolute nonsense. So I'm afraid the government seems to have looked at some models with dodgy assumptions and effectively delayed opening the country by 2 months.
Lastly, how disappointed are you then by the Prime Minister's actions here, Mr. Harper?
Sorry, Nick, could you just say that again?
How disappointed then are you by the Prime Minister's speech and actions yesterday, Mr. Harper?
Well, look, it was sort of a tale of 2 halves, really. I'm really pleased about the fact that schools are coming back on March the 8th. We made a very strong case for that to happen. We all know the massive damage done to children's education for them being out of school. So I'm really, really pleased that the government's getting them back on March the 8th, all schools, all pupils. I think that's fantastic. So that's to be welcomed. As I said, what I'm not as pleased about is effectively we've got a delay of 2 months to all restrictions going, which is going to have some real consequences for real people's jobs and livelihoods. And I think it's been driven by some dodgy modelling.
I'm grateful for your time and thanks for battling through a few bangs on the line there. Mark Harper is Conservative MP for the Forest of Dean, chairs the COVID recovery.